how are you?
I'm okay. I'm very well. I think my sugar is okay. Yeah.
Kwame, there was a sugar factory at Commander.
Past tense. Past tense. Past tense.
Is
Past party people.
as one of those future impossible tests.
Charlie.
One of those things.
Yeah.
Right, so we are on the sugar conversation.
Last week, you did a very wonderful introduction to this sugar and gave us some very good history as well. And some of us who are not the medical students even learned a lot, So today we continue the conversation on the sugar disease.
Right, so tomorrow is World Diabetes Day.
Oh, it's tomorrow.
Yes, at November 14th.
Right.
Yes, so it is tomorrow. So that's why we're doing all the sugar business right now. We all love sugar. And I'm talking about the term sugar because, after this month, we'll drop that sugar word and we'll call it by its proper name.
Which is?
Diabetes mellitus. Honey sweets. So, why the term sugar? Where did it come from? And it's stuck. And I think in the minds of a lot of people, they're talking about table sugar or the granulated sugar. All right? But when you talk to a chemist or a biochemist, then they will tell you that sugars is a generic term that applies to a group of molecules that the body or most organisms primarily use as an energy source. Your primary energy currency is what we call sugars. So not the sugar, but sugars. It's an umbrella term or a generic term that refer to carbohydrates, a group of carbohydrates. And I'll talk more about them. So most of the time there's this confusion. Anytime we talk about diabetes, the first time I would make a diagnosis of a patient, and you say, "Oh, Doctor, I don't usually take a lot of sugar, so why have I developed this?"
Yeah.
Because in the minds of a lot of people, we call it the sugar disease, or referring to the table sugar or the granulated sugar. But sugars are carbohydrates in general. There are three main classes of carbohydrates, and it is one of the four major molecules that make up the human being. Carbohydrates are a very big group, and there are three main classes. I need us to talk about this sort of like biology 101, because when we talk about the clinical features and laboratory investigations later on, we're going to be making references to a lot of this. Probably the basic unit of the carbohydrate molecule is called the saccharide. The saccharide. So you've got something we call monosaccharide. Mono means one. Then you have the disaccharide. Di means two. So it means if you have two of these basic units together, then you would have what you call a disaccharide. So that's the second class of carbohydrates. And then you have the polysaccharides. Poly means many or multiple, so polygons and so on and so forth. So we've got these three main classes of carbohydrates.
Okay.
Monosaccharides means one basic unit, and then you have the disaccharides, and then you have the polysaccharides. When I'm talking to my grandma, I just tell her that, "Grandma, we have simple carbohydrates and then we have complex carbohydrates." So the mono and the di are simple carbohydrates, if you like. And then the complex carbohydrates are the polysaccharides. Why do we call them simple carbohydrates or monosaccharides? They are the simplest molecular form, and they are rapidly digested and to release the energy that the body needs. So they form your primary energy currency of the body. That's what your body needs. That's what your body goes to, utilizes as fuel for the body. There are three common examples of the monosaccharides, or these very simple form of carbohydrates. The first one is something we call fructose. And Kwame, fructose is what we call the fruit sugar. Fruit sugar. And you can find it in fruits, obviously, but you can also find it in cane sugar, the sugar cane.
Right.
And then you also find it in honey. Because honey is made when the bees suck out the nectar from a flower, from a plant. It's very, very important because Kwame, next week when we have the open clinic, we're going to get a lot of questions, and people are going to ask us whether as diabetics they can take honey or they can replace their table sugar with honey. And I want them to remember today's conversation. Fructose, fruit sugar. It is the first example of the monosaccharide, the very simple carbohydrate.
Okay.
And you find it in fruits. Again, when a dietitian is giving dietary advice to diabetics, will caution you about your intake of fruits. And I want us to make the connection back to this particular point. Kwame, again, there are some of the marketing gimmicks that I see, because now we've talked about the dangers of excessive sugar consumption. The labeling requirements also demand for manufacturers to indicate the ingredients, the product. So Kwame, now these days, look, you probably won't find sugar, then you see fructose syrup. So how many people will know what fructose is? You know cough syrup. So the syrup you know, but most people wouldn't know what fructose is. So that's the first example of a monosaccharide, a very simple sugar, that carbohydrate that is rapidly broken down to produce energy. The second example is glucose. And the third example is something we call galactose. So Kwame, fructose, glucose, galactose are the three examples. Now, fructose is structurally very similar to glucose. They are mirror images. We call them isomers. So, Kwame, if you wear a pair of gloves, all right, they are mirror images. When you stand in front of the mirror, your left goes to your right becomes your left.
Right.
But I don't think you find anything wrong with the image you see. It's just the same Kwame Sechiama in the mirror. All right? So fructose and glucose are like that. They just mirror images, and we call them, in chemistry, we call them isomers. Functional isomers. Little different. So if you're taking fructose, it's almost like you've done glucose. And again, I need everybody to remember this connection when we talk about diabetes, where we're going to be measuring glucose all the time. But if somebody then replaces it with fructose, you're back doing the same thing. The other type of, the second class of carbohydrates is what we call the disaccharides. Another example of the simple carbohydrates. But the they have two basic units together. So the examples here are lactose, milk sugar. And then you have sucrose, the table sugar. So the table sugar that we all know about, the one we put in the cocoa, your tea, everything, its biochemical name is sucrose. Right. And this one contains glucose and fructose. If you manage to put glucose and fructose together, you make sucrose. So that's how it is formed. So if you eat that, you can break it down to what? To glucose. And if your glucose goes very high in your blood, then you develop diabetes. You know, so I need people to understand how we arrive at the dietary advice. Don't eat this, don't eat that. We don't just pull it out of a hat, but there are biochemical underpinnings to all of these things. So that's how we form sucrose. And then you go on to the complex carbohydrate, the polysaccharides. These are very difficult for the body to break down. I tell my grandma starch. When we say starch, think about these complex with the polysaccharides as starch. So they're going to be broken down to disaccharides, then they're going to be broken down into monosaccharides before your body can then utilize it as an energy currency. So if you're taking a complex carbohydrate, you know, and somebody just gulping everything down. You know, so you want to release the glucose into your body piecemeal.
Okay.
And that is why we would say you eat much more complex carbohydrates rather than eat simple carbohydrates when we are giving the dietary advice in the management of diabetes. So Kwame, this is a little background or the biochemistry behind carbohydrates. So diabetes mellitus, the disease that has been around for 1,850 years or so, that has great economic and social implications, and it's affecting children, young adults, elderly individuals, and ravaging the whole population or the global population. This is why it's important. It's about carbohydrates, and we just talked about the different types of carbohydrates, but it is one type, which is a monosaccharide, a simple one called glucose. At this point, we need to distinguish something. There is a disease called diabetes insipidus. And Kwame, the insipidus comes from the word insipid. When we say insipid, it means lacking flavor or tasteless, without taste. This is a totally different disease. So I always tell people that either you go the full name, you say diabetes mellitus or DM, because if you just say diabetes, we may be thinking you are referring to a disease entity called diabetes insipidus, DI. So for the avoidance of doubt, what we're talking about is the DM, where glucose is the problem. With DI, the person is passing large volumes of urine every day, but they have nothing wrong with their insulin levels, the regulator, and there's also nothing wrong with their glucose levels. But there is a hormone that comes from a certain part of the brain called AVP, and then also your kidneys. And that is why you are avoiding a lot. So that confusion, I needed us to settle that as well. Now, Kwame, let's talk about diagnosis. How do we diagnose this disease? And I'm going to look at it from the laboratory aspects. Diagnosis always starts from history taking. The doctor will ask you a series of questions. You provide answers. He will dig further. And then also do your physical examination. Then we would go on to appropriate laboratory or radiological investigations. So today my focus is not going to be on the clinical, the Q&A, the history taking, the physical examination. But let's jump straight into the laboratory diagnosis, because sometimes people come into the hospital and say, Doc, I want to check my glucose level. So yes, Kwame, what we are determining is your blood glucose level. It's very, very important. Now we've dropped the sugar business, because sugar doesn't really mean any particular thing. It could be one of 6 different molecules.
Yeah.
Right. But diabetes is about one molecule, and that molecule is called glucose. So your doctor is going to measure your glucose levels. We'll send you to the lab. You'll be welcomed by the medical laboratory scientists, and you'll be doing one of 3 possible tests. Let's talk about the first one, which most people are familiar with, and that is what we call the fasting glucose test. Fasting glucose test. So Kwame, most of the time people will come in and they'll say, oh, this morning I haven't eaten, please can you check my glucose for me? I need to make a few points here. We need to define what a proper fast is. Kwame, we're talking about an overnight fast. An overnight fast. So this morning, this test is done in the mornings. So you cannot come in the afternoon to get a fasting glucose test done just because you haven't eaten in the morning. We would not want to do this test beyond 10 a.m. And there's good reason for it. We want to know how your body handles glucose in the fasting state and also in the fed state. So this test is about how you handle blood glucose in the fasting state. And that is an overnight fast. And this is the range. You do between a 10 to 14 hour overnight fast. So Kwame, let's say you hit the hospital at 8 a.m. You'll think you are in early, right? If we walk back to 8 p.m. the previous evening, that's 12 hours, right? So you are in the range. So it means your last meal should have been 8 p.m. But I see a lot of people say, hey, and I see 8 me and the Diana Jono. Yes, we talk about anajufufu. But you know, in our kind language, you are nopa, ewia, enyumre, and you are najo. There's morning, there's the day, there's the evening, and then there's the night. So you're going to have to time it. And ideally, we want a 10 to 14 hour overnight fast. So if you have your evening meal at 6 p.m. and you get to the hospital at 8 a.m., I mean, that's 14 hours, right? Good.
That's like, 14.
So although we say we don't go beyond 10 a.m., the medical laboratory scientist would ask you a few questions just to be sure that you've not gone beyond this range. So I need people to note this very clearly, that this is what you need to do. It's an overnight fast, and ideally we want a 10 to 14 hour overnight fast. Then you come in the morning, quickly at the OPD, you announce yourself. Even if there's a queue, please make sure you make contact, because this is a timed test.
Yeah.
Most of the time, most people will even have this device at home, and that device is called a glucose meter or a glucometer. But you need to make sure that that glucometer has been properly calibrated, and the calibration center, Ghana Standards Authority, they have a very good calibration unit. Please, we are not talking about brands here and where you bought them, the machine from, the equipment from, whether it's from Germany or the US, doesn't really matter. It has to be calibrated. And then you can go through, and then we check that. And then we've got our cutoff points for making a determination. I'm not going to go into those things now, because people can misinterpret that and it could be a bit dangerous. But then that will be how the test is performed. And if you go beyond the threshold, the doctor will make a diagnosis of diabetes, or he will say you are not diabetic, or sometimes there's a gray area where we say pre-diabetes as well. The other test you may get is something we call the glycated hemoglobin. All right, a bit difficult to pronounce, but it's called glycated hemoglobin. This test is very important. It gives you a retrospective assessment of your blood glucose, 90 days, going back all the way 90 days prior to the day we are doing the test. So for this particular test, Kwame, you don't need to fast. So I need to put it out there. You don't need to fast for all the different types of tests we do for diabetes. There's one particular test, fasting not needed, because we're not measuring your glucose level that day. It's actually a retrospective assessment of your blood glucose level from 90 days from the day we take the blood sample. So that you can walk in and we can check morning, afternoon, evening. Then there's a gold standard one. I mean, what we really use most of the time to firm it up, because it gives us all the different angles that we want, and we call it the OGTT, oral glucose tolerance test. Here, Kwame, you need to go undergo an overnight fast, because we're going to test the patient in the fasting state, and then we're going to test them in the fed state. So we're going to give you some glucose drink, and Kwame will be our contact, you know about glucose. You know, now.
So remember how the little container looks like?
The little container with the red cup or something. And then, so you come in fasting, 10 to 14 hour overnight fast, and then we take your blood glucose level. Then we would mix a certain measured quantity of glucose for you, and then you drink it slowly. Then in the next, over the period of 2 hours following that, we will be checking your blood glucose periodically.
Okay.
And we will use the 2 hour value to make a determination of your blood glucose. So Kwame, this is what we would go through to make a determination whether or not you have diabetes, not diabetic, or pre-diabetes.
Okay. I know you're listening and you have questions out there. So next week, we're going to have an open clinic where the doctor will come and answer all the questions that you have about diabetes,
Right.
and the sugar disease that we've been talking about the past 2 weeks.
Right.
Yeah, I know people have questions. Somebody was asking me whether the sugar disease has anything to do with sugar daddies, but I don't.
Well, there's a sugar in there, but
There's a sugar
totally
in there.
different meaning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Right, and next week, Kwame, I'll talk a little bit also about the treatment options
Right.
that people have, but the focus mainly is going to be open clinic questions that they have, and we'll field a lot of questions.
all right, and I need you to, because I think I overheard you mention that your okay. Well, before you even what I overheard you mention,
Yeah.
on the 27th of November, we
Yes.
are all coming to Medicas Hospital. If you're listening in now, the doctor is inviting you. We're all going to be there. Drive time is going to be live from the new Medicas Hospital branch
Right.
at East Legon Hills. Are you guys ready for us?
Number 10 Kinshaw Street is ready.
Yeah. Tell the patients that we are coming to party. We're coming to disturb them.
Oh, yeah.
We better be healed by the time we get there.
That they will discharge and everybody will become part of the event,
Because when we come, we are coming to jam.
We are coming to jam. We are
Yes.
coming to yo.
Absolutely. So, the
Right.
opening of the new Medicas Hospital clinic at East Legon Hills is on the 27th of November
Yes.
at East Legon Hills.
At least
Number
10 Kinshaw Street.
Okay, great.
Yes, number 10
For those who want to call and find out more, what's the number to call?
The number is 0501 477 340. Our WhatsApp number 0501 477 340.
And just for the record, it's already running. It's opening.
Oh,
It's-
yes,
it's
we're
working
open.
now.
I mean, I'm just coming
It's
from
open.
there today
Yeah.
as well. So
You
please
can
walk
book
in
a
anytime,
consultation.
book a consultation. Yeah.
Yeah, but the ceremonial opening, Ese Kotiano.
Ese
you understand?
Kotiano,
And
Tia
on
Robert.
that day,
Yeah.
I will be the doctor on duty. Dr. Osafo will be busy.
Yes.
So on that day, I will be doing the consultation,
Wow,
the
you
surgeries,
Hey.
the injection,
Hey.
the endoscopy.
Hey.
Yes.
Oh,
So,
Kevin.
yeah.
I mean, you man only move.
Oh, I mean, I know
Endoscopy,
everything. I got this. You understand? So if you want to be treated by Dr. Lexis, then that is for me. When you come, Dr. Sam will be out there at the event.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be the consulting
You be
room.
the consulting
Oh my
room.
God. With my gloves, you know.
Kwame, you do go theater.
Have my stethoscope around my neck. My God, swag on.
You see?
But you actually mentioned that you guys are planning some free surgeries.
Yes, so Kwame, as part of our package for, and also wanting to give back to society, we are launching a package or a promo, if you like, free surgeries for named diseases,
Okay.
hernias, fibroids, and then piles.
Ah.
Hernias, fibroids, and piles. And I believe I've spoken about all three conditions on this show
Yeah.
a couple of times. And our doctors are ready, to also give back. The lawyers call it pro bono also. So we're going to do that, and we're targeting to do that for as many as 50 people,
Wow.
the first 50 or so. And we'll start on the 1st of December. But they need to call in, and they need to start booking. We need to do the pre-screening and all of that. But all of it will happen from the 1st of December. But hey, call, come through, and take advantage of it. This is a way we're giving back to the community.
All right, that's really laudable. You guys are doing an amazing job. I'm happy. Thank you so much for doing this. Give us the number again for those who want to.
So it's 0501 477 340. 0501 477 340.
Dr. Yaw Osafo is the CEO of Medicas Hospital, our Drive Doctor, and today we've been talking about sugars, sugar disease, and everything sugar, including sugar daddies. They're mostly bald, though. Not like the one in the studio, but yeah.
Sugar, oh honey, you are my candy girl, and you got me wanting you, honey. Oh sugar, you are my candy girl,
It's 5 o'clock. Here are the latest news headlines from the Joy Newsroom. My name is Kenneth Jesse. Presidential candidate of the New Patriotic Party, Mahmoud Bawumia, has vowed to be accountable for all his campaign promises if elected president of Ghana in December. He said this during a stakeholder engagement in the Obuasi East constituency.